Okay, that's Cosmo. Cosmo, you're going to be on YouTube. Everybody's going to be on YouTube with Cosmo. There he is. Okay, bye. Hi, guys. It's after 7 o'clock. It's Books and Bars. Welcome. My name is Jeff Kamen. Tonight we are talking about The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. And I am expecting a robust discussion from all of you. So thank you for joining us. If you've never done this before, it's really easy. You raise your little blue hand and it'll list for me everyone whose hand is up. You can also use our chat function, and we'll try to monitor that also and incorporate that into our discussion. I believe Lisa and Rebecca will be helping me tonight if there's any technical difficulties, and I will do my best to make this work. So welcome and thanks for participating. Does anyone want to know a little bit about Becky Chambers? Well, let me tell you about her. Here's what I know. You know, not too much, I gotta say. This is the first time that I read her, and this was a book that had been on my list for a while. A lot of people had recommended this one to me, knowing other stuff I liked, and they thought this would fit in with that. And I looked it up, and it sounded like a fun read, and it definitely was. I thought it was really strong on character and a little light on plot, which is kind of interesting. For genre, I usually almost expect the opposite. I usually expect kind of plot heavy and maybe light on character, whereas this one felt like it was more of like a hangout, right? It was kind of just like, you know, we're hanging out on this ship and, you know, a couple things happen, but not a ton. And if you like the people in your crew or on your ship, then it's a good ride for you. If not, well, you know, we'll see. Maybe it varied for you, but let's see, I'm looking for my bio information. I'll get back to that in a second. So did anyone just finish it, like in the last, you know, few minutes, couple hours, anything, and they want to tell us what they thought of it? Maybe what you would give it on Goodreads, or, you know, if you would recommend it to a friend or not, anything you liked about it. Anyone want to raise their hand and tell us what they thought? So I see Rebecca's hand is up. Rebecca, may I unmute you? Could you tell us what you thought of the book?
Yes, I finished yesterday. I hope that's soon enough. This is my cat, Georgie. She's a black cat. I guess evidently we have lots of black cats. I'm not seeing them all. But this will be the one time she'll be here. That's why I raised my hand quick, because soon she'll be gone. And her sister, Kitty, may come visit us later on, but we'll see. I agree with you that it was basically a character study, and I at first, when sometimes when we have books like that, I get lulled into this sense of, oh, everything's, and then they're going to kill them off, and then I was trying to figure out which one was going to definitely die, and you know, when the fighting started, who was going to be sacrificed, and you know, I was betting on the captain's girlfriend, and you know, I had all sorts of unsettled thoughts. But then as it kept going, I realized that no, I think she's setting us up for a world. She's world building, she's character building, she's gonna give us enough action that we will probably want to follow along. But I bet there's a ton, and I think I realized that there's a ton of sequels. So this is a fairly classic sci-fi fantasy genre where, you know, generally you have a little bit more ups and downs in a first novel, but I was happy. You called it a space opera, I think, or you made some kind of a tweet at one point, Jeff, about you thought there would be more singing. Well, it was very definitely like that. I mean, I could see these being like characters played by famous people with, you know, voices that we would recognize, or, you know, that sort of thing. There was a real, I don't know, I would say surprising variety, and also a homogeneity between them. You know, these are all good guys, and even the bad guys aren't that bad. So anyway, I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4. I generally am very generous in my ratings. I'll probably go for one of the sequels. We'll see. Anyway, so that's my story.
Well, thanks, Rebecca, and nice to meet you, Georgie. I think we've seen a giant version of you in a previous meeting, so it's nice to see your realistic size. From what I know of the sequels, they are kind of loosely connected. So it's really, it's like a new ship and a new crew that is in the same world with maybe some guest appearances from a few of the characters. So if you really liked these characters, you might be slightly disappointed to know that the sequels aren't necessarily following the Wayfarer, but they kind of show up, and it's kind of like it's just in the world. So you know, if you want a new cast and a new crew, all of that, you'll get that in the sequels from what I understand. Let me tell you, I see some good hands up here, but Becky Chambers was born in 1985. She is an American science fiction writer, the author of the Hugo Award-winning Wayfarer series. She's known for her imaginative world building and character-driven stories. She worked in theater management and as a freelance writer before self-publishing this, her first novel, The Long Way. And then it was a successful Kickstarter program that helped her get it done. But after self-publishing it, another publishing house picked it up and put it out again, got a bigger audience for it. And this then led to the sequels, and it won the Hugo Award for Best Series. She's also published a novella, To Be Taught If Fortunate, that recently came out last August. And it's completely unconnected to this world in those books. She signed a 2-book deal with Tor Books, which publishes a lot of fantasy books. And the first book with them is coming out sometime around May of 21. So I am going now to VS. Via, I see your hand up. May I unmute you? Talk to us, Via.
Unmute. Yes. Hi, Jeff. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you again.
Good. Good to see you. Thanks for putting this one on the list. I did enjoy it very much. It's out of my usual reading material. I don't read much sci-fi, so I don't really have a real basis for comparing it to any of the great sci-fi novels as far as figuring out if it rates up there. From my own personal enjoyment, I enjoyed it very much. I found it very entertaining. There were some things that I was really impressed with and some things I was not impressed with. So kind of first on the things that I was impressed with, as you said, the character building, the world building. I think she's just very talented at that. And I just love people with really crazy imaginations. There's just so much imagination in this. So I really enjoyed that. The descriptions of the characters were very vivid, and I felt that I was there. You know, this is a sign of good description. You really can see them. I felt I could really see them and hear them, and I was right there with them. I liked her use of language. The invented language was really fun. Things like the gene tweak and the immubot and the artigrav, and kind of my favorite, I think, was the dent bots, which, you know, when it's late at night and you have to go to bed and you, oh, I got to brush my teeth. Wouldn't you love to just put a dent bot in your mouth and just get the job done? I think that would be just so fun. So there was just like a lot of fun stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. On kind of the not so impressed with things on this, for this book, I almost felt it was just a little bit too feel good, to the point of being a little bit saccharine. At times I almost felt like I was kind of in a Disney flick, you know, for preteens, where, you know, we got the great crew, everyone's great friends, having fun, eating insects for dinner and just having a great time. And that was good. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it just got to be a little bit too much. And there was a little bit of lack of conflict, which I like to need. I need a little bit more conflict between people in the story to kind of build the tension. And I didn't feel much of that throughout this story and the long travels. And then I felt that whatever conflict did arise, she did kind of use it as a platform, which was kind of transparent sometimes, as a platform for messaging, which, not to say I didn't disagree with the messaging. I probably agreed with most of the messaging that was going on in here, but it kind of devolved sometimes into kind of an essayish kind of thing with a monologue of a character who just would go on themes like friendship and pacifism and tolerance and acceptance and those kinds of messages, just a little bit too much of that. And kind of an example of kind of a combination of the things where I felt there wasn't much tension combined with the platforming. The beginning of the novel I thought was really exciting. I was just like drawn right in. Here she is in this little pod hurtling through space to her new job, and she has a new ID, and she has some kind of secret past, some kind of secret she's running from. And all of that promise built some tension, but then to me, it kind of fizzled in the middle of the book when she finally does reveal her secret. And it goes into a thing where it's kind of resolved very patly and as a platform for Jenks to talk about how we just have to be ourselves. And then a discussion with Dr. Sheff going on about how, we make our own universe. And it became like several paragraphs of just monologue of, there's good and bad in all of us. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to be preached to quite that much in a novel. So that was kind of the downside for me. And the highlight, I really kind of like the relationship between Jenks and Lovey, although I wouldn't think that this would be something that I would find believable by any means, any stretch of the imagination, but this author did it well enough that I was pretty much drawn into their relationship, and I did feel kind of a loss of a human at the end at Lovey's demise at the end. So that was a high point of the novel for me. And that's about it. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone and reading something a little different with us. I had seen Craig's hand up, and I'm encouraging his hand to go back up because Craig is our resident sci-fi guy, in my opinion. I always would look to him to kind of be the expert on stuff. We dabble in sci-fi with Books and Bars, and I always feel like I'm trying to pick at least one good one every year. And if it's not one that people like, I feel bad. And I have to go back to the drawing board and find another one. We've read Dune. We've read some Ursula Le Guin. So we've definitely read some classics. But we do like to pepper in a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of sci-fi. And I think I've been more successful with my fantasy picks than my sci-fi picks. As far as what people have liked, but I'm not totally sure on that. Maybe you guys can disagree. We read Anne Leckie for sci-fi. Any others that you guys can remember and want to stand up for, or tell me which ones we should read, please do. I see Donna has her hand up. Donna, I'm unmuting you.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Like Via, I read very little sci-fi. So one of the fun things about this group actually is that we do such a variety. So it gives me a chance to read different things. And I just finished it yesterday, and I will say that I think Via mentioned this as well, that whole relationship between Jenks and Lovey was very compelling. And I guess I have to say that one of the reasons that I think this author was successful is that I found myself really rooting for them and drawn into that whole question of should she do one of those body packs or not, or stay AI, and then the big decision at the end about does she agree to do the body pack and go away so she's not a constant reminder of the tragedy that happened with her. And then she gets replaced by somebody who's just really, cut and dried basic AI. So I think as people have said, the character-driven aspect of it really drew me in. And I thought each of them was interesting as individuals. The interspecies stuff I thought was fascinating. I liked the gender fluidity piece to it. I mean, the fact that there were relationships and couplings and interests and all of that without any real stereotypes, which I thought was great. And I do believe that as Via said, that there was messaging going on, but it just seems to me that in sci-fi, I mean, heavens, every episode of Star Trek even had a message, something to think about in our own lives. And as we pieced together what actually happened with Earth, which, you know, some sci-fi doesn't even acknowledge there ever was an Earth, but in here we did kind of get a sense that it kind of destroyed itself because of the inattention to environmental conflict or climate change things, the fact that people couldn't work together for the good of the planet and all this stuff, which is kind of where my head is right now. So I kind of appreciated that whole piece. And as we realized the qualities of humans that these other species just thought were ridiculous, it did give us a reason to kind of reflect on where we are. And that was fine with me. And I really liked the little piece about researchers being a librarian. You know, remember when they were on Cricket and there was a Nib, is that his name, who was just, you know, a news junkie. He wanted all this information and he loved researching to find the truths and unbiased truths. And so I thought there was a good plug in there for people that love research. So anyway, but I'm looking forward to what the rest of you sci-fi aficionados have to say.
Do you think we have a lot of them here? I feel like there's a simmering undercurrent of sci-fi love at Books and Bars that is only slightly tapped. And I'm wondering if they're going to come out tonight and we're going to hear a lot from them. I see Kara Berger's hand is up. Maybe Kara Berger likes the sci-fi. Talk to us. Do you like the sci-fi?
I'll show you. Hold on. I'll show you my cats. They're both watching me from afar. But I have my black cat. Oh my God, she's running away. I approached her and she ran away.
So many
the
black
other cat,
cats at Books and Bars.
Yeah, that's Alex.
Awesome.
And Kiki is the one who fled.
Very cute. Would Books and Bars be more of a coven than a book club? Maybe it's a book coven?
Maybe.
Or if you've seen American Movie, one of my favorite documentaries, it's a coven. Rent it if you haven't seen it. American Movie, trust me. All right, Kara, talk to us.
Great. Well, this is like one of my favorite authors and probably one of my favorite books. Although I kind of take her whole body of work as one and say that it like rates there, because if I had to pick like a top 5 novels, it would be really hard because she's written like 3 novels and a novella, and like it would just all be Becky Chambers. So I just kind of grouped her all in one. I love her.
Awesome.
Yeah. I when I was trying to think of like what criticisms people were gonna have of the book to prepare me, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna like take it personally, any negative word about this book. But it's okay, everyone. All the criticisms I've heard thus far have been ones that I predicted, because it is like a book that doesn't have a ton of conflict, or at least relationship conflict. I feel like the main conflicts are always kind of like person versus themselves, or person versus like an outside force. And then the way they handle both of those things is very compassionately and reasonably. And I feel like if everything I read was like that, it might get a bit boring, but I feel like almost nothing that I read is like that. There's always like a lot of conflicts where I'm like, they could just have one conversation. They could just talk to each other and this would be fine. And I get a little sick of that, where it's just like people being unreasonable and all of the conflict stems from like differences that shouldn't be irreconcilable, but are because they won't say anything to each other. So I think it's a breath of fresh air. Becky Chambers, like, I don't know, if people just have like a level of like respect for each other and like a willingness to like share their feelings that I find very refreshing. But one of the things I think I love most about her books is how she writes non-human characters. The fact that everyone like does buy into, like, maybe not everyone, but everyone who's talked thus far buys into like Jenks and Lovey's relationship. Like, she writes an AI so much that we view her as a person. And Sissix and Dr. Chef and Ohan, I feel like they're all like so obviously people. And I feel like what makes it work so well is that when she writes from their perspective, she doesn't write as if they are the aliens. She writes as if they are the people and everyone around them are the aliens. Like, it's not like Ohan is foreign when it's his perspective. It's everyone else. It's the humans who are strange and different. And I think that she does like a better job of like most authors that I've read. And then I will make a plug for her other books. For those of you who are like, oh, there's not as much plot, or, you know, it's too nice. I feel like she addresses some like more difficult topics in her later books. And I think they stay character driven. I can't promise that there's a lot of plot, but I think that she delves, she just has gotten better at handling a character-driven novel and making there a more clear arc. And I'll say the second one, so I'll just kind of, they're not spoilers, but the connections that you get, there really aren't a lot of cameos, Jeff. Like, the only character that shows up that's the same in the second book are Lovey, who, it's not Lovey anymore, right? Loveless was rebooted, so that's like a new character. So Pepper, who's briefly mentioned in this book. Pepper and Loveless, who changes her name, are the two characters, and it's only their perspectives. And then in the third book, the only crossover is Tessa and Aya, who, if you don't remember, they're mentioned because they're Ashby's sister and niece. And so they're like big characters in the third one. And so Ashby is mentioned, but he never like shows up. So if you are attached to the characters, the big warning is that they really do not show up in these other books. It's like kind of a mention, but they all have their own kind of stories and conflict, and none of them take place on ships. The second book takes place on the planet that they visit for supplies that Pepper lives on, and then the third one takes place on the Exodant fleet, which is the human fleet that fled Earth, like as it was finally being destroyed. And I know I've been talking a lot, but the other final thing I really like about it is how she portrays humans. Like, unlike most sci-fi, I feel like humans are kind of like the subspecies in this world. Like, they're barely scraping by. There's a question of whether they deserve to be like members of this galactic commons or if they should stay refugees. There's a quote where their Chef and Syssix maybe are talking about them, and they say that humans were conquerors, but they only survived due to luck and humility. And so I think that's like a unique perspective, and I think that like kind of the humbleness of her human characters is also what makes them so appealing to me, versus like, I don't know, a lot of the other sci-fi books where humans are still kind of conquerors or explorers. Even optimistic ones like Star Trek, they're still kind of like the big, powerful species. So I think this is a really nice, unique change.
Awesome. Thanks. And I think there's something to that. You're definitely right. If it was all that you read, it maybe wouldn't feel as special as every once in a while when you read something where the characters get along, it's optimistic, there's positive problem solving, and the conflict isn't, these misunderstandings or other things like that, and it isn't so dark. It's like watching Parks and Rec once in a while, or watching Ted Lasso now on Apple, which is like the happiest, feel good, no problem show if you're looking for something like that. Yeah, most of the stuff, we've heard the complaints. I pick dark, depressing books. So it's amazing when I pick one that isn't. So enjoy it, people, because who knows when the darkness is coming back. It's probably very soon. Actually, it's not. We have some really fun books coming up too. They're not very dark, although there are some witches coming and there's some Halloween stuff. Which reminds me, coming up, honestly, I'm currently listening to our late October book, Nothing to See Here, by Kevin Wilson. I haven't laughed this hard out loud at a book, and it is, and I'm not done yet, but like, I don't think they're gonna, it's gonna botch, I don't think it's gonna turn bad by the end. I absolutely love this book. So, and I think you'll really enjoy We Ride Upon Sticks also. I think they're both good October picks. And then there's there's actually kind of an election aspect to Nothing to See Here too. So those are two plugs for our upcoming ones. Also kind of light, not dark, and fun and funny books that I think you will enjoy. Thank you, Kara, for speaking that long at length about it. I have the second book in audio, so I am committed at least to that one. And thank you for explaining, so I'm not expecting too much of a connection between them all, but yeah, I'm interested in reading more about Becky Chambers, so thank you. I see, oh, we lost a hand, but Craig's hand is still up. So Craig, can I unmute you? Could you talk to us, Craig? My sci-fi guy, guy, talk to us.
Hi, how's it going? I had to step out, but I heard you talking about me in the other room, so I'm back.
I'm saying really positive things about you.
Yeah, good. I'm sorry if I repeat anything that anybody has said, because I missed a little bit there. Kara, I loved your comment about how they kind of like just like work things out and figure things out as adults. Like, that was so refreshing in this book. Like, there wasn't kind of that big overarching like thing they built to or whatever, but there were like just a number of things that they like smaller conflicts or whatever that came up during the book, and each time it was like, all right, well, that's terrible, let's like go figure it out and like work together and do it. And it was just refreshing. So I love that part of it. I read her To Be Taught If Fortunate, her novella. That was also really good. Different from this. This one is so far out or whatever that it's kind of more like fantasy, really, like all the like alien cultures and stuff. To Be Taught If Fortunate is kind of like a future you can sort of see or whatever. You can, it's still like, you know, people traveling away from Earth and exploring other worlds, but you can sort of see the connection to our Earth. Oh, Kara, also there were like people meeting other alien species and kind of like being the lesser. Old Man's War series, if you've read that or if anybody's read that, like it kind of starts out like the first book is mostly just from like Earth's perspective or whatever, but then as you get through it, it's like this bigger like galactic thing, and people are sort of like the underdogs, or like or humans I should say, are kind of the underdogs or whatever, and they're not really the big players in that universe. So it's kind of a cool thing. Let's see, what else? I really enjoyed this book, obviously. So I kind of put Becky in like this new breed of sci-fi and fantasy that's coming out. That's kind of like the old guard has been tossed to the side a little bit. It was definitely one of those things, you know, dominated by old white men for a long time. And, you know, I'm going to be an old white man soon, but right now I'm a young white man, so I can be excited about all the new stuff that's happening, and the new sci-fi like and fantasy like N.K. Jemisin and that sort of stuff. It's really cool to like hear these different voices, these new perspectives, and like kind of stuff that's clearly sci-fi and fantasy, but is still new. It's a lot of fun. One last thing, I've been listening to a podcast lately, Our Opinions Are Correct. That it's from IO9, like the science fiction website or whatever. And they, the two hosts do a great job of like kind of talking about a lot of this like new sci-fi stuff. And it's, I don't know, really good podcast if you want to learn more about it. So I think that's all I got. This was fun, Jeff. Keep picking sci-fi and fantasy. Don't read anything else.
Well, Craig, keep suggesting good ones. I have The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin on our maybe 2021 list. Have you read that one?
I haven't read it yet. I will either read it as soon as it comes up in Books and Bars, or otherwise like it's sitting on my bookshelf, like waiting to be read if you're not in time.
Okay. Well, I'll try to be timely for you. So thanks, Craig. And thanks for being the resident sci-fi guy. Kevin, are you with us, Kevin? Can I unmute you?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
So I haven't finished it yet, but I'm really liking what I've been reading. And one weird thought that I had while reading it was this feels a lot like someone's tabletop role-playing game. In that, like, there's every time you meet a new alien species, there's like this long description of like what their traits are and their relationship to everyone else. And like a lot of the conflict is kind of episodic throughout the novel too. And then to another point that a lot of people have been bringing up, that there's a lot of conflict, but it's handled rather cleanly. And not, that's sort of something that you want in a good tabletop role-playing game, where it's you want there to be conflict and you want there to be character disagreement, but you don't ever want anyone to end up actually mad at each other. So it did really feel like kind of like a group of friends in a role-playing game almost. At least so far. We'll see in the next half of the book.
Okay. Yeah. I've actually seen it's similar to like a choose your own adventure sort of book, but there were some books published where you were encouraged to roll a die while you were reading it. And it was like that would determine your move or what page you went to. I know like Marvel put out some of these books. I don't know if anyone read any of these before, but it was like a role playing game book in a way, but yeah, I can see that. I like the idea that you don't ultimately want to get too mad at anyone you're playing with. You're still on the same crew, you're still in the same party, all of that. So well, I look forward to you finishing it and then seeing what you think, whether you rolled that 20 or not. So thank you, Kevin. I see Evelyn's hand is back up. Evelyn, you're with us now. Please talk to us.
Hi guys. This is Josie. She is a black cat. You can barely see her, but yet another black cat for everyone. She's not mine, but I live with her. I'm her favorite, obviously. So, okay. This was such a wonderful, wonderful surprise. I ended up staying up until almost 1:30 in the morning finishing it last night. So I've had 4 hours of sleep. But it was great. I thought, like everyone else said, very character driven, all of that, but I don't think that the science or the sci-fi themes were lacking at all, which I thought was super great. They were just like low key in the background, but like what I really loved was that they were written as background, but you could tell there was a lot of thought and a lot of like knowledge that came through. I've like, for example, that Aeon ship, the one that Pei has, when they talk about the smooth walls and the doors that don't have like frames and they just sort of disappear open or like sort of like dissolve open. That's actually something that I follow the sort of like UFO is real theory situation, and that's actually like the description of one of the aircrafts that like the US government supposedly has. So she like knows a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's kind of cool that she used it in the book. What else? I wanted to say, yeah, I don't know. It was really good. I can't wait to read the others.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Evelyn, and thank you for operating on so little sleep and finishing it in time to discuss with us. So to be clear, you follow, are you like Mulder, you want to believe? Is that what I'm hearing? You said something about UFOs. You follow the idea of believing or wanting to believe in UFOs?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I don't know. There's a couple like podcasts and like people that are like supposedly have worked at like places that the US government has run. And I don't know, so far little things have come true that from what they say. So who knows? I don't know. I think I want to believe. I want to believe.
Awesome. Well, I think we need a good conspiracy theory book to read for Books and Bars that really stirs up some stuff. So if anyone has a suggestion for some really good conspiracy theories, especially current, stuff that we can get behind, I'd like to read it. So yeah, I want to believe too, because otherwise I can't believe that, there's all that empty space with nothing else out there. Allison has her hand up. Allison, I'm unmuting you. Would you speak to us, Allison? Are you with us?
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hi, Allison.
There's always a delay for my Wi-Fi. Can you now? No.
Last time when your video was done, your audio was good. Do you want to try it with just audio, maybe?
Yeah. Let's try that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Okay. That's fine. I don't mind not having my video on. So I realized I'm not much of a sci-fi person, but I was gonna give this book a try. And I really enjoyed it. I felt like I liked the story. I loved all the characters. I loved how it played with like gender and sexuality. I just really appreciated that. And I really, like other people said, I liked how like someone came in with maybe something that they were hiding and they were able to be honest and then be able to like build their relationships with each other because of that. I feel like so long it's hard for people to be connected with people who are lying to them. So this felt more genuine. Like, look, when you're honest, you can get support, and people can move past it. Yeah, I was thinking. I liked how there was like the language in there. Like every time she said stars or things like that, I just wanted to include that in my vocabulary. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. I see Rebecca. You have your hand up. Rebecca, are you with us still?
I am. I was going to build on something that Cara talked about, and that was Becky put in there a kind of a supposition about how the universe is created, about there's a certain amount of material, there's a certain amount of physics rules, there's a certain amount of things. So we're not surprised that species have, some kind of atmosphere, have some kind of ways to reproduce that are similar. In other words, we may all look very different, but there's actually a lot of commonalities. And I thought that was an interesting way to try to make sense of, I'm a heavy, deep sci-fi. I mean, from all the old dead white guys kind of a thing, and it's very science-based. And so I appreciated that there was some attempt in her mind to correlate the possible science of it all. And I haven't gone into whether or not she's, done much of that, but it allowed me to relax into, what's the word? The confidence that the author is going to abide by the rules that she has established. And that for me is always something that you kind of have to be careful in sci-fi or fantasy. If the all of a sudden, there's some new species or some new thing that have such unimaginable powers, it's like, it doesn't make sense that this conflict or whatever, these people these things would survive. So I appreciated that it kind of was that humans were not on par. Obviously, we had a lot to learn, but we were amongst peers to an extent. And I do think that there was still a little bit of oh, humans, they'll get better. Oh, they're so cute, whatever. We still got, I think, a big pass for our aggressive behavior, but as the experience with what's his name, the chef, Dr. Chef, that species can really be horrible even within themselves. So it's not exclusive to humans. So
Thanks, Rebecca.
I just wanted to say, I started off thinking about this book in one way, and now I think about it in a slightly different way. And I'm really appreciating that. I realize that I've been trained to look for conflict. I've been trained to expect it, and right, as if that's the only way that a plot moves forward. The old saw that there's only 7 major conflicts or whatever, or plots and whatever. I'm eager to kind of explode that. And maybe if all the conflicts are not coming from interpersonal relationships, as so often are, and can be on other things, I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to grow and expand in my perceptions. So yay.
Yay. Well, I'm still hoping that we get some conflict tonight. We can't all agree. So, if you have anything you want to disagree on tonight, don't worry. All opinions are welcome. And I would love to get, spark a little debate here. I see a fresh hand with Abby Mayland. Abby, may I unmute you? Can you talk to us, Abby?
Yes, I unmuted myself. Sorry.
All right. That's all right. Go for it.
I'm Abby. I have a black and white cat named Frankie. So not quite a black cat, but almost. And I really liked this book. And I think the thing that I really liked about it was I like the relationships between the characters. And like we've been saying, they're very mature relationships. They all tend to talk and communicate with each other, which is really nice. And I felt like I was like friends with them, you know, like I like knew about little things about their lives and whatnot. But Kara and I were talking before this meeting, and something that we'd kind of talked about was that everybody kind of had their own little section or their own little chapter, except for Dr. Chef, and I don't think Kizzy had one either. And we were just saying that they maybe were, or I felt like they were kind of the characters that we didn't get like a ton of story or backstory on. And so I don't know, I just wondering if anybody has any theories or ideas of why that would be.
Well, it's interesting because Kizzy is one of the most gregarious, outgoing, talkative characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we hear a lot from Kizzy. So I feel like we sort of get to know Kizzy just with what they reveal. But I don't know. Yeah, Dr. Chef. I mean, interesting. You know, it's funny when you have the two titles, two really important positions, you know, for this crew. Anyone else have any thoughts on Dr. Chef or Kizzy? I see a fresh hand with Andrew. Whether it was about this or not, Andrew, you're here. Welcome to you. And may I unmute you, Andrew? Talk to us.
Hello. I don't have any thoughts on Kizzy and that particular relationship. I have read a fair amount of science fiction, really gotten off of it in the last 15 years.
Wait, to be clear, did you just say, wait, you've read a lot of science fiction and gotten off on it?
Gotten away from it. Okay. But I really enjoyed it at the time that I was reading.
We can rewind the video because I know what you said.
Absolutely. Back in those early days, there was a lot of getting off, you know, all that Piers Anthony and Dragonlance, and you know, that was way pre-internet. So I'm an old dude. Okay, well, thanks for that. My video's not on. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll start my video. Okay, so sorry. Now you can see me blushing.
No, that other part wasn't you. The guy who said that other thing was not you. It's perfect.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Who said that?
Who said that?
So some Dragonlance dude came in.
Yeah. So that was all when I was very young. But the author that I really enjoyed was Robert Heinlein, and I enjoyed this book because I thought actually it was an awful lot like a Heinlein book. So Heinlein doesn't do a lot of the extensive world building. He doesn't do a lot of the science. A lot of things are interpersonal, individualism, sexual relationships, and things like that. So some of my very favorite books are like Stranger in a Strange Land and Starship Troopers and these types of things that take on kind of societal type things. And I thought Becky Chambers did a really nice job. I'm actually very glad to hear that she doesn't repeat the characters, because that was a Heinlein trait where he didn't really have a lot of sequels or anything like that. He had a couple of books that I didn't actually enjoy that had characters that ran between them, but he was always kind of setting characters within a context to see how they would react to these things. And several of the scenes that were in here could have just been kind of cut straight from a Heinlein type of novel. I didn't particularly like the characters, which is another great thing about Heinlein, is if you didn't necessarily we weren't invested in them in the next book or anything like that. But I thought she did a really nice job of a world building in a small structured way, where you don't have to get 800 pages in order to understand the ins and outs of these things, and also that left a lot of things ambiguous. So I forget the name of the society, the Angry Planet they were going to. She did just enough so that you kind of understood that something weird was going on out there, but you didn't get all of the backstory on why these people were this way, what their internecine type of things were. You just got that as part of the story, and it ended with this kind of individualist captain in front of a Senate committee, if for lack of a better term, kind of explaining, why did you guys screw us little guys that are out there, and that was a very Heinlein-ish type of thing to do. So in the vast array of old white guys, if you really dislike the old white guys in sci-fi, I would definitely suggest picking up one of Heinlein's more popular books, because he was much edgier and much more free love. You know, he was a little bit more subversive than your typical author at the time, and I think Becky Chambers carried that on very nicely.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Do you have a particular Heinlein that you recommend? Is there one that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so the three best books are Starship Troopers, which was turned into a movie, which I would not recommend the movie unless you just love sci-fi. But Starship Troopers is a fantastic book. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is a fantastic book. And then Stranger in a Strange Land is a little bit longer than the other ones, but that's probably the most iconic of his novels, and it's fabulous. But there's I mean, he wrote lots of fiction that was very much young adult, very similar to this, where it would have been accessible to teens, and they're just great adventure novels. So Space Cadet Will Travel was a great one. Red Planet was a great one. These were really, they were really well thought out novels, but just, you're talking 200 pages of fun.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, I was about to call on Ruthie, but she's back. Ruthie, you have a fresh hand. Can I unmute you? Can you talk to us, Ruthie?
Hi, I was just going to see if I could find my cat to show you all, but he's currently hiding. So unfortunately, I can't introduce Kamal, but he is a black and brown and gray cat. So we can kind of try with you. But I don't have anything too controversial to say, unfortunately. I also liked the book. I don't often read much sci-fi, but was glad to have the opportunity to read this one, and was surprised by how much I liked it. I think at first I was a little skeptical. I remember looking up about a third of the way through and just thinking, oh, wait, nothing has happened yet. But then got more and more attached to the characters, and by the end it was like just almost bawling because I was so attached to the characters. So kind of on the same page as a lot of people with that. I really appreciated the gender fluidity in the book as well. I think to me that was one of the more interesting concepts of this book, and maybe this goes into other sci-fi books as well. I don't really know, but I really liked being able to kind of forget the Bechdel test, because that doesn't matter anymore, and just take this all to a new level and not really have to critique whether everyone was given a fair chance or portrayed in the right light, because they're all just who they are. So I thought having that new perspective was really cool. Dr. Chef was definitely one of my favorite characters, even though he didn't get maybe as much time as some of the other characters. I just thought his anecdotes were funny and kind of relatable, and at one point he was talking about how he just ate the whole finger of ginger, and that was how he realized that ginger is not meant to be eaten that way. So I don't know, I just really liked his kind of anecdotes and sagely wisdom, but was kind of curious if anyone else is interested to share who their favorite character was too, since they're all so different. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to hear it. I see in our chat there is an ongoing discussion about Kizzy and Dr. Chef, and Dr. Chef did have some backstory, a few pages about his past, and Kara throws out an idea of what Kizzy's main arc might have been. But so Dr. Chef was your fave. Anyone else? Raise your hand or tell us in the chat some of your favorite characters and why. But I see a fresh hand with Sue. Sue, can I unmute you? Talk to us, Sue Warner.
Hello, I'm trying to get my kid Duncan. So hold on just a moment.
Okay.
I'll try not to drop my iPad. So this, can you see him?
Yes, cute.
There's Duncan.
Awesome, hi Duncan.
Hey Duncan. I also live with 2 other cats. One, my roommate is Gizmo, and Busy is inherited from a PCA who couldn't take the cat with her. and she sleeps most of the day in her cat bed while I work on the kitchen counter. So that's my life.
Awesome.
I am a sci-fi fan from way back. And I love this one. Maybe not, a 5 on Goodreads, but I gave it a solid 4. And in the comments, I mentioned that the tone reminded me a lot of Firefly, the TV show.
Mhm.
Just the wacky characters and kind of the situation that they get in. But I don't know if I could name a favorite character because I liked a lot of them, but maybe Jinx. So that's all I have.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sue, and I'm glad you liked it. And thanks for introducing us to Duncan. I see, let's see, Kara's got her hand back up. Kara, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us.
Yeah, I just had a couple things that I thought might be interesting for people to
Please.
know. Like, we talked a lot about like her relation to science and stuff, and I don't know if everyone read the author's description, and she goes more into it at the end of her book or her novella, To Be Taught If Fortunate, but she's very influenced by her parents who are scientists, and her mom is like an astrobiologist. And if you read the end of To Be Taught If Fortunate, she and her mom interview each other, and it's really like quite a nice interview. Her mom is asking her questions about her writing, and she's asking her mom questions about her work and like how her work could relate to her books. And so I think like that kind of makes sense. Like, she's clearly been enmeshed in science from a young age, even if she didn't go into science herself. The other point that I think is like an interesting one, and all of the things we've addressed with like how, people resolve conflict in very mature ways. I don't know if she ever says this in like the acknowledgments in her books or if this was from an interview, but I remember her talking about how it just made sense to her that if all of these species were able to like, survive the end of their planet and, make it to space and like meet other people, that of course they would like, try to like get to know them and be able to like relate to them as people. Like, she has like a more optimistic view of it than I think a lot of sci-fi, where the first thing aliens do is go out and conquer. The one alien race that she writes about that did that are the Harmagans, or the Harmagans. I don't know how the pronunciation would be, but they're the like kind of squid-like creatures that are like normally live in water, but to get around on land and to interact with all the other species, they have little carts that they go around in. And like hundreds or thousands of years prior, they were kind of like galactic conquerors. And she kind of goes into that more about how I feel like her kind of at least when I read it, I don't know if it's intentional, but when she talks about them in like her third book, I felt like they're kind of her US America equivalent, and not that we have reached a stage of enlightenment where we're actually doing good things for the world, let alone the universe. But the Harmagans, like, she has a character who's Harmagan who is talking about her culture, and she is basically saying like, well, who's to say that we're like, we have more rights to belong to the galactic commons just because we're wealthy. We've done a lot of harm to like other cultures and have accrued so much wealth. Like, of course humans have as much right as us. Like, the humans that came to us haven't done any harm to the galaxy and haven't harmed any other alien species. Like, yes, we have wealth, but our wealth like came from all of the terrible things we did in the past. And so they're kind of like the one alien species she writes about that I feel like is the more stereotypical sci-fi narrative of like an evil species. But we get to see them thousands of years later when they've kind of, started to get along with everyone else. And the other thing I wanted to just mention and maybe hear people, because we haven't talked as much about Ohan, and I think Ohan's character and his species is one of the more interesting. And I feel like his has one of the bigger ethical questions, because like Ohan's species and his religion involve basically dying young and like letting this parasite live in their body that gives them these abilities. And I think the book kind of comes down on that it was right for Corbin to like, give him the injection so he can live and be amongst them. And it seems like Ohan in the end is like cool with this. But I thought that was like one of the bigger ethical questions in the book. And if you're interested in reading more about it, she has a short story called The Good Heretic that focuses on Mas, who is the other Cyanet that you meet, who kind of gives them the information about Ohan. And it's from her perspective, like as a child growing up and like becoming a pair and then becoming a heretic. And so if you want to read a little short story about it, you can read it on Amazon for free. If you just look at the book collection it's in, you can just read the preview for free. It's like, I don't know, maybe 10 pages. And I don't know, if you're interested in the Cyanet pairs, I found them one of the more intriguing alien species. Yeah.
Thanks, and you're definitely right. I'm interested if anyone else has thoughts on that bit of an ethical dilemma there with that choice and where you landed with that. I agree with you. I do, but I don't want to sway anyone. So I see Evelyn has her hand back up. Evelyn, are you with us? Talk to us.
Hi. Yeah, I did want to talk about Ohan because I think I think he was my favorite character, and then I guess they had to come along with it. But yeah, I thought that whole thing was fascinating. There were parallels to Educated in a way, right? Because you know, you're steeped in this religion, and that's all you know. And in addition to that, it is like he is almost I don't know, in a way, because his brain is being taken over by this virus, he is ill, he is sick, right? So that's maybe, you know, sometimes like we say with people who are mentally ill, like, you know, sometimes you have to make the decisions for them because they're not in the right state of mind occasionally. So I can see that perspective, but it's also like really a hard ethical dilemma. I thought it was really wonderful, but also painful to see how his end was sort of portrayed as he was coming towards the end with, like, you know, injecting him over and over again just to keep him like alive enough and with it enough for them to, the rest of them to survive. That was a heart-wrenching thing to read. It was really well done. Yeah, but he was definitely my favorite character, and I thought I would love to see more of that sort of species and how that all worked out. It was cool to see the heretics or the solitaries, and how once they were freed from the, what was it, like whatever it was, the virus, they Whisperer maybe, they were able to use their brains to do all this cool tech, which was awesome. And it was also cool how they weren't using it for profit, just for, you know, the good of their planet. So that was really cool. I wanted to go back to Kara when she was talking about Becky Chambers' mother. I think she did thank her mother for proofreading the science for the book. So, and then the other big conflict that we haven't even mentioned is the Torimi. Can we talk about them? I just didn't understand that in a book where every species was given all the benefits of the doubt, even the humans, like ultimately the GC fell on the side of cutting out the Torimi. Like, I didn't understand why more effort wasn't made to really understand them. Because they were, I guess, what did they call it? Sapient. They had brains. So I don't know. In my head, they were almost like the, those like bugs in Ender's Game. Do you know what I mean? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So like, but like somehow they were not like functioning properly. I don't know. But I also thought that they weren't given the benefit of the doubt. But maybe I missed something. I wonder if anyone has anything to say about that.
Okay, please chime in if you do, or put it in the chat. There's some good discussion in the chat right now too. But I see Donna has her hand up. So Donna, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us.
Oh, okay. We can get back to the Taremi in a minute. I just wanted to make a quick comment about when we were talking about characters that we felt got a little bit short shrift or didn't have much of a story. I felt that way about Corbin through most of the book. He was one of the first characters we met because he was supposed to give the tour of Rosemary when she arrived at the ship and then kind of passed it off because he really just wanted to go and take care of his algae or whatever. And I noticed his absence from so many of the key scenes that happened for many pages after that. And it wasn't until, and I thought, oh no, is the author keeping this character down in the bowels of the ship working on his fuel stuff because he's going to emerge later as some big villain or something. But on page, it wasn't until page 314, so really way into the book, where he was arrested for being a clone. And all of a sudden, he had a really interesting, I mean, it just brought up again, yet more kind of philosophical points about cloning and what are the rights of a clone and what did his father do and how he realized he was a clone and then later, you know, had the conversation with his father. And so, and then the fact that to get out of there, probably the most other reclusive character that they talked about more and kept a chair for him at the dinner table was Ohan. And then they ended up having to have that relationship, that kind of a bond there in order to save Corbin's, to rescue him. And then Corbin ended up, of course, as we were saying earlier, being instrumental in injecting the, whatever that stuff was, you know, to make that change in Ohan and continue his life. So anyway, I thought Corbin was kind of a mystery to me, and then all of a sudden he emerged again toward the end. But yeah, okay, so let's get back to the, I mean, I want to hear what other people have to say about the Taremi, because they were, unless there's, I thought maybe in the sequel there'd be more about them because they were kind of undeveloped in here and we don't know what was still going to happen. But it sounds like they probably aren't in the later books. So, okay, so go ahead. Thank you.
I posted a little bit about them from the wiki. There is a Wayfarers fandom wiki about the Taremi. So there's a couple paragraphs I put in there. And Lisa has a good question about cloning in here. And I see Kara has something about the Taremi in here too. So, but Kara's hand is up. So Kara, talk to us.
I'll just say I wrote it, but I do think I do think it's fair to say that she doesn't go into like the Taremi as much and we don't learn about them as much, but I don't think it's like that much of a weird thing that they weren't allowed into the Galactic Commons. There's like a lot of species that aren't allowed into the Galactic Commons as members. The fact that the Taremi basically are not coming in as a united species, that if they do side with one clan, they're basically like potentially wiping out other clans by virtue of their influence. I feel like there's a lot of like ethical reasons why it makes sense to not like let them in. But also like there's species that are non-harmful, like the Grum, that wouldn't be allowed in because they're not like a big presence. They're not really bringing anything in, but I think they can still become like, I don't know, citizens as individuals. Like you can apply for citizenship in the GC. It's just that your species isn't going to get membership. So I think that's like, I don't know, the main thing. But unfortunately, the Taremi are not really a part of the other books yet. She does have a 4th book coming out in 2021. Maybe the Taremi will get some representation, but they're barely mentioned in the 2nd and the 3rd book. Like the GC is huge and the Taremi are on like these outskirts. It's like a very far away war that's not really impacting most of the planets or citizens. Unfortunately, if you are interested in the Taremi, this is like the most you get so far.
Kara, I love the way you talk about it as though this is just fact, and these are things you know that you're just relating to us, like, you know, just so you know, like this is going on out here. I mean, like, and you're just telling us. It doesn't even sound fiction when you say it. I like it. It's very exciting.
Have I read fan fiction? Do I like live in this universe? Like, yes.
That's awesome. Well, you're a very good ambassador for it. So yes, you definitely make me want to read more. So thank you. Rebecca, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us, Rebecca.
I felt like the Teremi were an unsuccessful Borg. They wanted to become Borg. They wanted to all think together. They wanted to have a single thing, but they just kept having these darn stray thoughts and fighting against it. And so anybody that kind of reminded them of that, they would get irrationally angry at. And I wasn't clear, and maybe Kara or whomever can explain to me what they overheard Rosemary say that made them so mad. Maybe it was because they weren't being successful at being, of one mind. I don't know. But I just had to say, I really love the Borg as a construct, or, as a thought. And so to come across an unsuccessful Borg was kind of fun.
Nice. What else haven't we touched on yet that you guys want to talk about with this one? Anyone else have characters they want to pitch as a favorite, or any more on the Teremi? Anyone want to tell us the next sci-fi that we should read at Books and Bars? What do you got? Anyone? This is a much more energetic and talkative group. It's a smaller group, but most of you are talking tonight. It's very exciting. So Donna's hand is up. Donna, talk to us. Unmute yourself.
I loved it. I found it interesting, your comment in the chat, Jeff, about how Becky Chambers said it started with a lizard woman character. Because
yeah, I wrote that because I read that.
Yeah, well, but I felt like Syzyx really was the most developed character in a lot of respects, and maybe that was why she was one of my favorites too. But she was so different and yet so relatable, and then we end up with a love story for her too, which was kind of interesting. And we also got so much about her, how her species treated the concept of family, and how, in her species, you started as eggs, but then they weren't your family, or they were only a nest family, and then or an egg family. I can't remember the terminology, but you kind of went through these different phases in life. And there are even comments in there about how that young people in middle life didn't raise their children. The old people raised the children, because they said, well, they don't know anything. The people in the middle, like what we think of as like young parents, young adults, don't know anything about and don't know enough to be good parents. So they kind of left that responsibility to people as they were older, when they actually were ready to settle down and pay attention to children and impart some wisdom and so on. Anyway, I thought that whole section was just loaded with commentary, kind of sociological kind of commentary about roles of children and parents and all of that, and relationships and monogamy or not monogamy. I mean, it was just packed with that. So I'm not surprised that she maybe started with that, because it just kind of blossomed from there. So.
Yeah, Donna, she's the character that I felt I knew the best from here, and the one that I felt the most connected to. If we're naming a favorite, I felt it really was, it wasn't a surprise to me to read that Becky Chambers said, kind of laughingly though, like, it all started with a lizard woman. And then I was like, what can I do with that? Like, I just had an idea for a lizard woman. And then it was like, a galaxy was born around that character in a way. So yeah, really, really deep into Syzyx, some really interesting stuff, and a lot of great detail there. I see our sci-fi guy, Craig, is back. Craig, I'm unmuting you.
Hey, awesome. Okay, so I was just looking up some book ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, so The Three Body Problem, I know like very little about it, but it's extremely popular. Is written by a Chinese author and translated, and Obama recommended it. So like, that's like, really good.
And this might be a negative though. The guys who adapted Game of Thrones are adapting it for Netflix. It's going to be a big series. So whether you like that or not, it's going to be a series on Netflix done by Dan Weiss and or Dan, those guys.
Yeah, they did a really good job when they had books to work with, so maybe it'll be fine.
Yes.
Game of Thrones, good tie-in. George R.R. Martin's assistant, Ty Frank, and I can't remember the other guy, write a series called The Expanse, which like as a series is like very well regarded. The first book I think would work well for Books and Bars. It's sort of in this kind of vein where it's like humanity stretching out into space. There aren't, well, there isn't really like an alien culture or whatever, but you're far enough out that the people who like live in like the outer ring are like very much different from the people who live on Earth or Mars or whatever. The first book also has this kind of like strange element to it where there's like this sort of noir detective story going on, which seems so weird for sci-fi, but it works really well. And beyond that, somehow it continues, like the stories continue to work well in the following books, even though they don't, like this first one kind of is the only one that has that like noir detective piece to it. Anyway, I can't remember the name of the first book. The first book in The Expanse. It might be called The Expanse. Anyway, that's really good. And I want to read The Three Body Problem. So, you know, those two would be fun for us to do sometime soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. Remember when we did Dune?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that? That was awesome.
I want to see
you
that.
Guys seen the new Dune trailer? It looks good.
It looks really
Although
good.
it'll be delayed, like we won't see it for like a year, but the trailer is good. So yeah, someday we'll be able to see it. All right. Anyone else on the writing style? Anyone on any takeaways? Like why, other than wanting to write something about a lizard woman, do you think Becky Chambers wrote this? What she was trying to say? What you got from it? Anyone on that? Anyone on her writing style? If you'd read more by her. I see Rebecca. Rebecca, talk to us.
I think one of the things that I took away from this is that home is not the planet that you came from. Home is the people that you choose to be around, and that you truly can become a spacer and identify with it. And I guess I would say that one of the things that we haven't talked about, but for me was one of the biggest characters in the book, and that was the Wayfarer itself. Most space novels, space journeys, whatever, they're always cold in inhospitable environments, and then you get to a planet and you're like, I'm on the ground, I'm in the ocean or whatever, and then you have to go back up to that cold, inhospitable place. In this case, I think the ship was more hospitable than most of the places they went off on planet. So I really appreciated that they all had a haven, they all identified as family together, and that was their identity. And so that's my takeaway from this book, that Becky Chambers did a really good job of saying we're not destined to be where we're from.
Awesome. Thanks for that.